next speaker for the day is Navarasu, who will be speaking on data analytics in Ruby or Rails way. Navarasu is a solution architect at Francium Tech, an intense seeker seeking profound experience of technology, music, and life. This talk is to showcase how we can manipulate data distributed over a cluster using functional concepts with vanilla and Ruby or Rails stack. Please welcome Navarasu to the stage.
Good afternoon, guys. Good, we had coffee. I know it's very tough to listen to session post-lunch. Okay, let me start. So, thanks Rails Factory for the banner. Give some 3D effect, okay. I'm Navarasu, Muthu from Chennai. So, I'm working as solution architect at Francium Tech. I'm in industry almost for 14 years, and I'm programming since my 9th standard, almost 20 years. Started from Fox Pro, now in Ruby on Rails. Francium Technologies is both consultancy and also we have products. One of the core Ruby flag waving supporter. Okay, let's start with a small story. So Jim Hugnin was juggling in a park. He's not a juggler. He's a programmer, but maybe part-time, I'm not sure. So he met Pavel there. He is a scientist at Xerox PARC. While they were juggling, Pavel told Jim about a new programming language called Python. So Jim has developed the numeric library, which is ancestor of NumPy. So from then, the pandas, SciPy, scikit-learn, and all this deep learning libraries evolved. So this is answered by a Ruby fanatic in Quora.com. What if Pavel had mentioned Ruby instead of Python while juggling? Would Ruby have eaten the data science world? Okay, that didn't happen. Because at the time, Java and JavaScript were in an earlier stage to try, and Ruby was still in Japan, not famous. So this talk is surely not about using a library alternative to Python library, because they are very good, they are very stable, so we are not going to use that. So this is purely data analytics in Ruby on Rails way. So we are doing this almost for 6 years. So this project. Few people are from Tamil Nadu, I assign. So do you have seen a Vikram Veda movie? So it's coming by September 30, right? Okay. They have a storytelling format. I'm just to copy that. So like Ravi, Raju, and Police, something like that. So this is about data analytics, language, approach. So in general, when you ask which language to choose for analytics in internet or your friends, you'll come across the dominance of these two. This is truth. So Python for static data analytics. So so we know the story. The NumPy and friends evolves, then the deep learning follows them. And when you take stream data analytics, Scala become the part because of Spark. Actually, Spark has good architecture, so they're doing good, handling the stream processing. And now even Apache Flink joins a party. Now it's famous. And even, Apache Flink is supporting Ruby, but we are not using that. Okay. But in general, right, there are multiple data analytics projects. I have worked in almost 4 projects, actually. I just quote some two of the examples here, which are solved without them actually, because that's not required for all the data analytics problem that need to be solved. So one project is a pattern insight. Actually, we used to cover all the US, Chinese patterns events. They were huge. There will be multi-stage of data processing. They were completely done in stored procedure, in DB functions, because the data team is separate, so they were managing all these things. Even the query to display in the presentation layer were maintained in data, because they know what the data has to come from which DB. So the data was completely with the data team. They are only SQL experts. So the remaining team were Ruby. Unluckily, I'm not working with the data team. I was working with the Ruby team at the time. So I was working on the presentation layer and the data collection. So this is another one. This is network monitoring analytics that we recently solved in Francium. Before coming to us, this was using Spark actually. There was a single server. The entire network flow was in a single server. This is like our router, right? Router inputs. So a lot of inputs are coming in. So we need to enrich the data to which IP, how much of data. So it's a UDP protocol. So they have a single server, and they were using Spark because they want a faster thing. But what we did is we replaced it with a simple Golang, deployed in Kubernetes with a simple Docker, just all fine. And they were scaling, and we use the traffic proxy. So it just split the network into multiple machines. So we were handling 2 GB per minute of data. So, and the rest of the product were, so after the data flow into the Druid, and the data analytics part were handled in Ruby. So what I'm trying to say is the choice of languages and frameworks is context dependent. So why we use web development for Rails? So similarly, so even data analytics we can consider. So I bring in here my example. It doesn't mean that all the projects will fit in, but I just want to explain my use case so that which may match yours, because I have seen in a lot of data analytics, so they are not just modeling and doing some statistics in the first phase. So 80% of it were data extraction, cleaning. So data will not come easily. We need to web scrap sometimes. Okay. My current project is a purely data insights product. Being live for more than 6 years, I'm maintaining it. So I was maintaining the admin tool, which is the entire data flow to the main application. The insight was a separate application, which was separate DB. And it was built on Rails, and the front end was Vue. So mine is completely Rails using the embedded Ruby. Because the client or whoever will not spend time more on developing a UI for an admin tool, right? But admin tool is required because the data analytics are scrapping, required manual interference to do analytics, improve it over the time. So here we are not doing stream analytics, we do a lot of static analytics. So we collect data from large scale, so from web. So the data collected, also we collect data from official, so some of the statistical data, and we make metrics out of it, and it will be flowing to the main application. So why Ruby? If you see in the data analytics task, right, there are a lot of things which are non-statistical. Like one main thing is web scraping, because it's more important. The quality of data is important. If there is no quality of scrap, if I missed even a single page, I may miss insight out of it. So, and the background and batch workflows. Believe me, Sidekick is really doing a good job here. Actually, we are using Sidekick Pro for the super fetch. So we are almost running for last 4 years with Sidekick, and they are doing really good. Then, if you check the Python, right, they have Celery. Even they use PySpark to run with Spark. Because using Spark for for data analytics may not required, because it depends upon how much data you load and how much stream it comes. For batch processing, using Spark will be we'll lose many things actually, because in Sidekick I can easily access the ORM layer like active records. It's if you to set up in Spark with Hibernate connections, everything. That's not simple as Rails, right? So, and seamless integration with external tool like Postgres, Elastic, whatever. So, so when you're for data analytics, if you're using more into Postgres or Elasticsearch or other tools or for a database like Druid, then we may not require specific language, right? So here we mostly use SQL and Elasticsearch and Rails. And data parsing and conversion. You know the very well famous Nokogri, and a lot of data parsing was in Ruby with C bindings, of course. Apart from that, as a data architect, so day-to-day activities, right? So we need a quick development for admin tool. Okay, I cannot spend a lot of times with the UI developing to analyze something. Maybe it may be short-lived screen or maybe long-lived screen. So I need a quick. So embedded Ruby plays a great role in developing those screens. Also, ease of use, readability, and maintainable has to be considered in data project as well. For example, I said right one SQL project where what happened, right? So there are a lot of bugs that were not addressed because they don't have a proper unit test because they were DB function. They find hard to fill in the data and run the DB functions. We need a lot of automation expert to do. But later on in presentation layer, actually, we captured all the bugs. Believe me, we found almost 600 data bugs in a shot. And of course, quick debugging. Always I spend with Rails console whenever there is a data issue. It's very quick, and I'm comfortable and enjoying. And testing and deployment. We have 95% coverage for all my data analytics, because I'm using divide and conquer approach. So I just take one data and process them and just fill the data there. So this is how I do. Coming back, so richness of Ruby. So how many of you heard about Ferrum? Oh, great. It's a alternative, I say, Ruby version of Puppeteer. Actually, it's used CDP protocol. Really, they are active and they are doing great. And HTTP Ruby, now HTTP priority is less used than HTTP Ruby. So Nokogri, of course, and and Sidekick and callbacks, right? Really, they are playing a great job. So when I do a data insertion, and based on the data quality, for example, I insert a contact data, it doesn't have email, I need to do email processing. So I just trigger that. So all this are handled in callbacks very neatly, clean, and I'm able to test it. And of course, we need a ORM layer for all the SQL processing, right? So active record model, the URL, because a lot of times you will not be able to create a model, so you may need to use the custom query sometimes. And Redis and Elasticsearch integration was very, very cool. And of course, for testing and deployment, we use all the Rails things we use for web development. Okay, coming back to problem statement. So we do a lot of data analytics here. I just take one problem and just going to say how we solved it with in Rails. So first, the problem is, let's say we have a lot of business unit here. For example, a lot of hospitals or whatever, finance or whatever. So they offer a lot of service, right? So what we need to find is whether they offer the service or not, what kind of product or software they use, and which vendor they have bought the software. So we are not doing for hospital, this is for a different domain. So two big deal we have to handle is, one, we need to scrap 100K websites. Some of them are business units, their websites, vendors' websites, publicly posted jobs, news articles, and extract information from the terabyte of raw HTML. It's completely raw, right? So what we have is, we have domain experts. So they have domain knowledge on what are the patterns that we can find from the data to find whether the service is available or not, to find whether they use particular product for it or not. Okay, now comes to the second story. So data crawl, the browser, serverless. So crawl, right? So we need to crawl 100K sites with Ruby and Rails. So we adapted serverless approach. So not the framework, okay? So we plan to build an engine which run independently, and also be able to scroll the engine, scale the engine, sorry, based on the need, and self-terminate when there is nothing to do, okay? This is very simple. So we build an engine. So what it does, right, it take one site at a time. So one site, maybe main page, and it crawl parallelly, exponentially, until the depth. So I cannot go and crawl exponentially, right? So I have configured some depth. For example, if I access the main page, then I get some links, then I go to the second transfer. So then I go to third. So like that, so I have a depth configured, so not it grow exponentially. And it port the data to the centralized DB. It's very simple. And check next site to crawl. If there is no site to crawl, then it self-terminates. It's simple. And if I say single sidekick task, so what it does is, it take the URL, visit the URL, and it grab the HTML. Then it take whatever the links in the page, and it trigger further atomic tasks. So that's how it grow exponentially. Okay, for crawl, yes, we will be using HTTP, but not all the sites will support HTTP. They require JavaScript. Okay, using browser is heavy, you know. So what we end up, right? We want a lightweight browser, so we use Splash API. Anybody used Splash? Okay, it's a lightweight web browser. They give a Docker version. You can configure in AWS Fargate or ECS. So it will solve whatever the website which requires JavaScript. Then we use Chrome headless. Sometimes they need the real browser, so we use XVFB. And also we use mobile proxy. Nowadays the general proxy, right, they give simple IP and they get exhausted. So we use mobile proxy, which rotates every 15 minutes, 30 minutes. They give Wi-Fi proxy as well. It's very cheap, at the same time effective. So what the crawl engine does. So we have a global Redis. We have all the sites to be crawled in the Redis. So the engine takes one sites and it crawl and it pour the data to the centralized DB, and it checks whether other sites to crawl. If not, it self-terminates. So I just clone the machine. So it's just, we are in a cloud era, so I just take a AMI and clone the machine. So I have automated all the process actually. So it just clone the machine. So 3 sites will be running. So now I scale horizontally. So 1K instance will be running, and I complete all the 1 lakh websites. So I use AWS Spark server. This is, that's cost saving, and and this is for this purpose. And while horizontal scaling, right, so things to be considered, right, they are atomic dependency because they cannot depend, right? No bottlenecks. For example, I'm pouring the data in a centralized DB, and it should have a certain limit to pour the data, right? So it should be scalable. What we do is, so every month we do bulk processing. While bulk processing, I just crawl all the websites. So during the bulk processing alone, I just scale up my DB, scale up my other the DynamoDB and also the RDS. And When the process is done, I just step down. And also the error monitoring, I use centralized error monitoring because that's I cannot handle uh, in a log or something. So we need to monitor all the errors, because when I'm crawling 1 lakh of website, it will be full of errors. Okay. so so what next is to extract information from out of it. It's so what's the topic is custom search, keywords, and categorization. So I just rewind. So what we need to find? We need to find whether the service is offered by the business unit, and we need to find whether the products vendor used for the service. So I have raw HTML, so I cannot do NLP techniques or like named entity or topic modeling. Even I cannot do finding pattern recognition with any statistics, because it's have less accuracy, but the data will not be, which data I will find in the, the sea of data. So we have two sides. One, the raw HTML and links, even links we found in each page of sites on job info, news articles, etc. Other side, we have domain expert. They have worked in the business unit. They know what are the products and what are the services available in the industry, and they also know how to find them. So all they need is a tool. So what we did is you used pattern search instead of pattern recognition, because we cannot do any statistic model here. That's why we use Ruby. So we use Ruby for simplicity. That's not a reason. So we did pattern search using the known pattern by our domain expert. So what we did is we created a custom search tool on the top of Elasticsearch with the embedded Ruby. So they quickly do a search, filter, business specific filter, and do all the filters. And out of it, they create a keywords which they are confident about those records are belongs to particular product and particular service. So what we do, they create a keyword and they tag it like which service or which product may be, and they also give the score, because they cannot be confident 100%, right? They will give 5.5% or 0.9%. They give the score. So our data processing is simple. So what we do is extract and index all the raw HTML. So we take H1, title, paragraphs, everything. So each has some priority, right? If it's a title, which has high priority, which if it's paragraph, it's low priority. And we index them. So the search tool has all this data to search. So like they do Google search, this is a private search for each business unit. They can concentrate and they can see the products. They create the complex elastic query, and I given a tool to create keywords and tag it. Okay. So from the behind the scene, what I do, so once I take each keywords and business unit. For example, 50,000 business unit we have. So we have 300 keywords. So 300 into 50,000. So I'm not good in maths. So that much job I need to run. So I take one data, one keyword, and do a search. I take all the categorized result, I put into DB. So this is what it does. So then from the stored categorized results, I put on the query to find whether the service is available and find the best vendor product out of it, because they have the Elasticsearch score. I also do boost score based on the availability, whether it is a title, I do boost score. So finally we able to find. So, and based on the score, we give how much percentage we able to, I'm confident that we able to predict the data. So it's almost like a prediction, right? So without any law, because this is like supervised learning. So when coming to technical part, right? So we do distributed processing. How we do is we have a global Redis. Our Sidekick server won't run there. So we have separate Sidekick server, and I use Sidekick Pro because we need super fetch algorithm, because I don't want any of my data queue to get lost. Many of you are already aware of super fetch. And I don't want my Sidekick servers to stop. So I put in the service like restart always. So the only way is to terminate the machine. So when I start the machine, Sidekick will be running. Even in the Sidekick UI, if you have seen, so if I stop, it will restart. So I want my all process running, and use a separate queue for each data processing. So I use separate queue name. Even I have overridden a few options in Sidekick to configure which size of machine to do and how much queue it's good to scale. And of course, callback played a greater role in initiating jobs based on the data. So this is auto scale process. So, so we mentioned the machine type, the queue name, and the number of parallel count. So which are decided while cloning the machine, right? The Sidekick queue is not hard-coded in the service. So while cloning the machine, in the AWS user data, I just pass which queue to run, how many count I need to run. So I decide, so okay, I need to run, for example, the search processing. So how much machine I can scale, how much machine for each queue count, how much machine I can create. So that's everything has been configured in a Sidekick auto scale service, which automatically scale based on the queue. So all this configuration, right, I mentioned just in the Sidekick worker jobs itself. So it's very handy to maintain. Yeah, so I'm standing here to show us a living example like data analytics can be used with Rails. So like we do for web development, and thank you.